Thank you. Okay, see how easily I can be thrown off track. So welcome everyone to the January 10th, 2022 Select Board meeting of Wenham. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. This is a virtual Zoom meeting. Any votes we take will be taken by roll call, and we will introduce ourselves by way of taking attendance before we start. So, Gary, if you just say
here.
Diane Bucco here.
Catherine Harrison here. So did I do it? Did we get that far?
I think so.
I think so too. Okay. Now then, in the absence of a slideshow, this is really a one-purpose meeting, and it's mostly to talk about next steps and also the events that occurred last week. So before we start the meeting, if we've actually gotten through all of the preliminary stuff, I did want to start by repeating a joint statement that we read into the record last week after we returned to open session after our executive session, but we'll read it again because it is the basis of much of this meeting tonight. So this is a joint statement of the Wenham Select Board and Mr. Ryan Ferrara. The Wenham Select Board and Town Administrator Ryan Ferrara have entered into an agreement to end his employment with the Town of Wenham. His resignation was effective Friday, January 7th, 2022. Mr. Ferrara would like to extend his gratitude to the Wenham Select Board for the opportunity to serve as Wenham's Town Administrator, and to town staff and citizens for their support. The board thanks Mr. Ferrara for his hard work and dedication during a very challenging period in Wenham. The board wishes him well in his future endeavors. So the purpose, much of the purpose tonight was originally to talk about next steps relative to that, but we had in the meantime a Board of Health meeting, and they discussed some pretty timely topics and made a few motions. So if it's okay, I'm just going to, for the moment, well, I will ask for public input because people know that's at the beginning of the meeting. So if anyone would like to put their name in the chat and add any public input to that, we'll give them 30 seconds to do that. And seeing no one, since I've already announced this once, they've had plenty of time. We will skip the announcements and the reports and go directly to new business. This is actually item C on our agenda, and it has to do with, I'm just going to get there on my slide. It has to do with the Board of Health. The Board of Health had a meeting, was it the 7th, Dr. Ting? I think.
Last Thursday. Yeah.
Okay.
6th.
6th.
I'm sorry,
The
Dr. Ting, it was
7th.
Friday the 7th. It was
Oh,
the
sorry.
7th.
Right.
Yeah, it was the 7th.
Yep.
Where they discussed a few issues, some of which we will be taking up at another meeting, such as COVID test kits. But there were two topics in particular that had to do with the Select Board. And Dr. Ting, if you don't mind, I'll let you just summarize. First, we have the recommendation regarding mask use, and then we have a motion to that. But if you want to spend a minute telling us what that was about.
Sure. So as people know that in the last several weeks, with the advent of the Omicron strain of COVID-19, that the number of persons at least in Massachusetts and in the town of Wenham has markedly increased comparatively since November. If anyone would like to actually see the real numbers, we post them every Thursday. They're on the webpage, COVID-19 webpage. But given the the steady climb of cases, especially in Wenham and in Hamilton, we felt it was necessary to protect the public by again returning to the requirement of wearing masks inside indoor public areas. We already have such a regulation now in the municipal buildings like town hall, but this would include other indoor public areas and food establishments as well. It would exclude when you're at a food establishment and you're seated when you were eating and drinking, that you could take off your face covering, but otherwise you would be required to wear one inside. Hamilton had passed such a motion at least 2 weeks ago, and that is currently in active. And we at least had one citizen of the town of Wenham raise concern about Wenham not having a similar regulation in the town, given that the numbers are rising as rapidly as they are. So that was the first area that we had made a motion to enact that with a end date of the end of March. But the board would be meeting regularly to evaluate the numbers and then decide whether or not, depending on what happens with Omicron, we could end the mandate for face coverings inside sooner, but I'd rather keep it as such given what the numbers have been going on now. So that was the first motion. And the second one was regarding town hall, about whether or not that, given the rise and trying to keep the staff safe, of whether we should go to a locked and appointment only case, which we had done during the heart of the COVID pandemic. And there was at least one staff member who had mentioned that right now the volume walking through town hall was not significant. Everyone was wearing face coverings. They had reposted signage outside regarding the face covering, and felt at this point it could be safe to continue to leave town hall open. And again, we want to allow, the public to do what is necessary business. And so the board didn't have any significant feeling either way, but at least I think bring to the attention of the select board that we want to keep those individuals safe. And if they could be allowed staff to be remote work, if needed, that would be a possibility. So those are the two areas we looked at. And the last one, which you'd mentioned, was about COVID testing kits.
Right, I think there was one more about town meeting.
Oh, yes. And sorry about town meeting. Yeah. So there's so many things that happened. So the
Yeah,
town meeting is on the first Saturday of April. And given the current status of COVID, we felt that it would be prudent to continue with the outdoor meeting that we have had for the last two town meetings that we've had, which have were done very successfully. And I don't see things changing enough that we could go back to an indoor like the Bucher School with the closeness and not keep people safe. So we had recommended that you consider going back to an outdoor venue. Obviously, I don't know the particulars of what that would require, but that would be at least the Board of Health's recommendation to do an outdoor venue.
before the board talks about this a bit and we take our votes, are there any questions for Dr. Ting? Or I think Mary Beth Ting is also on the call. Are there any questions for the public health folks? Looks like not. Okay, so we have drafted motions for two of the issues. Thank you for that, Dr. Ting. It was a lot to discuss in one meeting, and you were as efficient as usual. And we will put a pin on the test kits because I feel like that's something important for us to follow up on. But we do have, under new business, two motions. And Gary, I actually texted them to you. I don't know if you have them. If you don't, I didn't print them big enough to read them. But the first motion has to do with sort of accepting the recommendation of the Board of Health on the indoor indoor masking in public areas. So if you have that,
I do have the motion. Are we ready?
okay, yes,
Move that the select board approve the Board of Health recommendation made at their January 7th, 2022 meeting to require face coverings / masks in all indoor public facilities, including food establishments that follow the guidelines that masks may be removed when seated for eating or drinking through the end of March 2022 and revisit the mandate.
I second that.
there's, okay. So just by way of discussion, the one piece of this that we might want to talk about a bit is there's an end date or a proposed end date, but we, the board, don't have an effective date when it will go into effect, and it's a little bit dependent, I think, mostly on signage and communication, because we'll have to let public facilities that are not town facilities that already know the situation, we'll have to notify them that this is the case. And I believe, and this is a question I think for Dr. Ting, I believe in these situations, since we're not in a state of emergency, the enforcement of this, should it need enforcement, really rests with the police. And basically, if someone who's in one of these establishments notices that some folks are not masking, they would report that to the police and there would be enforcement that way. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think so. Two parts. One is I think there is a list on a listserv of those places that would need notification. So I think somebody has that in town hall, but I can help them find it. But
Okay.
yes, in terms of enforcement, what had occurred last during the pandemic was if somebody in the town or out of the town was in an establishment where there was not a either signage about the face covering or folks inside, that they could make a quote complaint to the Board of Health, and that we would follow up. The assistant health agent, Bobby Cody, had visited some places in the past to again reaffirm the regulation so we could do it that way. Obviously, the police are sometimes called, but in terms of I think education, a reminder of what is currently the regulation should be done first. So
Right.
I'd be happy if the police want to bring the attention to the Board of Health, and we can just send out somebody to remind folks.
That seems to have worked in the past, right?
Yep.
So as far as an effective date, today is January 10th. I give that to the board of, I guess really, and staff, to Michelle and whoever else from staff is here, of how quickly. I don't think there are very many establishments that need notification, a few. But do you think, I'm going to ask if we think it's possible for this to be effective at the end of the day on Wednesday, the 12th? What does the board think of that?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
the list isn't that long, so we should be able to make phone calls to about everybody tomorrow.
And put some signs up on the doors.
Yeah, signs, perhaps we could make some signs for any of the businesses that might need them. But yeah, in my head, I was thinking the 13th, but so the end of the day on the 12th is perfect, I think.
Okay. So then
I'll amend the
just-
motion then.
just to have an effective
Right.
date, yeah.
I'll amend the
sorry.
motion to include a effective date of January 12th, 2022.
Okay,
Second the
Um,
amendment.
okay. Trudy, I see your hand up. Is your comment or question, does it have to do with mask use?
No, not until town meeting.
Okay, then I won't forget you, but we'll
Okay.
wait until we get to that second
Yep, thank you.
stage, okay? If there's no further discussion, we're ready to take a vote on this first motion regarding indoor mask use. Diane,
Yes,
Gary,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. Okay, so we have unanimous motion, thank you, to approve the Board of Health's recommendation regarding mask use in all indoor public areas. We'll spend tomorrow contacting the three, maybe, folks that establishments that may not have this information or don't have this information, and we'll get some signage for them and for us. So we'll do that in the next day or so.
I do think it's
Okay.
more than 3. It's there.
I think it is.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I said 3 thinking food establishments, but really when you look at all of the establishments that are not in public buildings, there are more than 3. And I do hope someone has a list because that would be easier, although, we could also probably walk down 1A and find out. So the second motion that we have has to do with the annual town meeting recommendation that the Board of Health has made as of this point. And let's take the motion and then we'll take comments on it. So I think you have that one as well.
Yes. Move that the select board approve the Board of Health recommendation made at their January 7th, 2022 meeting for an outdoor venue for the annual town meeting on 2 April 2022, as done in prior years, subject to financial and staffing considerations.
Second,
And that last financial and staffing considerations, we added because there are a lot of logistics and we also really don't know the costs and we don't know for sure that we have the same kind of funding that we did before from the state and federal government. So those are things that we'll have to determine. Trudy, you had a comment on this particular?
Yeah,
On
hi,
town meeting?
Captain. It's Dave
Oh.
Reed, Captain, by the way. Hi.
Oh, hi. Yeah, you didn't sound like Trudy, actually.
Voice dropped a few octaves.
Yeah,
Yeah, the only thing I want to put into the consideration, because I also believe it should be outside, is that the beginning of April, it typically is only a 50-degree average. And last year, when we did it in May, it's about 10 or 12 degrees warmer. People were freezing then. So I think if we're going to definitively drive to be outdoors, at 50 degrees for people to sit for 3 or so hours outside in a tent is going to be call it a non-positive situation for people.
right,
So
sure.
I know we've discussed the difficulties of moving it, the date anyways, but I think putting people outdoors at 50 degrees, we're either going to have a low turnout or people will be very uncomfortable. I just want to bring those points up because I did some checking and it is about 10 or 15 degrees cooler at the beginning of April than it is in the early part of May like we did it last year.
Right.
That's it.
Oh, thank you. Certainly that will have to be a consideration, what we can do for temperature, size of the tent. Those are all things that we'd have to figure out. Is there anything else that we want to talk about with that before we make a motion to go in this direction unless something stops us? Yes.
Dr. Ting has a comment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't bring it up, but in the last previous 2, there was a recommendation or that folks had to be still face covered during those annual those meetings, despite the fact they were not indoors. So that I think doesn't have to be I don't think a Board of Health decision as much as I think, you guys can decide, but previously it had been, and yes, I heard the concern of Mr. Reed in terms of the temperature, and I'm sure there's hopefully ways to accommodate that through some kind of heating mechanism, but I am short of knowing any more about that.
Yeah, and there are a few details like as we get closer, will we want face coverings and separate people who want to be in a different part of the area. So we'll have to figure that out. Those are, I think the urgency for making this decision now is that we're probably not the only town that's in this situation and may be having to make a decision because the actual procurement and the logistics take several months. So I think that we're going to probably have to get started pretty soon to understand what it will take and to actually procure those, what we need for an outdoor ATM. I think, and someone help me remember, I think that we had a special after, this would have been after our first outdoor meeting in the spring. I think we had a special in the fall because we did most of the budget, all the budget items early in the, in the spring. I don't know if it was May or not, but I feel like we were under a tent in October at
Yes,
some point.
That was cold.
That is very cold. So we can use that as an example of what we might need to address. Okay.
And we had a movie night before.
Oh, right,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
right. Movie night and
The
bonfire.
dental- Yep.
Yeah. Oh, some things that I was not expecting to have to be dealing with now, but there you go. Okay, so we have our motion. I think we had a second, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and if there's no more discussion, thank you for your comments, Dave Reed. We will take a vote on that. So Diane,
Yes. Good idea.
Gary,
Yes,
yes for Catherine as well. And we'll just, so that's unanimous, and we will start working with finance and others and divvy up the duties and see what we have to do to make this town meeting possible. Okay, so I think that's all the Board of Health. Those are all the Board of Health issues we had, unless anyone has any last questions. If not, we may perhaps let the Tings have dinner with their family. Okay, thank you both for being here. I'm sure we'll be talking again, and thank you for your work at the meeting last week. Okay. Getting back to our agenda. There are just a couple of announcements. Some of them are timely since we were having a meeting tonight. The first announcement we've pretty much already talked about, but it is a reminder that we're continue to have COVID-19 vaccine appointments and clinics on Wednesdays at 3:30 to 6:30 at the Hamilton Senior Center, and that we continue, I say we, Mary Beth Ting, continuously updates our website, wenhamma.gov/COVID, for current rates and also to sign up for the clinic. So thanks for that information, but further COVID information is available online. I'll mention, since apparently we have more snow coming up, just remind people that there is a winter parking ban in Wenham effective through the 31st of March. So no vehicles may be parked on town streets from midnight to 6 a.m. DPW, as always, and everyone who plowed, I thought did a good job, considering I'm sure they had less staff than usual after our last storm, which was a big one. We've included the local election information. Again, this information is partly because it starts today. A lot of it starts today. It is available on the website. We've already mentioned our town meeting will be Saturday, April 2nd. The town election is Thursday, April 7th. And as of today, nomination papers are available at the town clerk's office. That information is all on the website as well. And we have a number of elected positions open, again, listed on the website. So anyone who is interested in an open position can now see Trudy in the town clerk's office to get nomination papers. I have an agenda item for reports. I have no particular report at this time, since we just met last week, although a lot has happened. Gary or Diane, do you have anything that you'd like to report on in particular? That
I do not.
forgotten?
nor here.
Okay, so we will move to our new business, which is kind of open-ended, has been left a little open-ended. The first item is a discussion of the next steps for addressing our now vacant town administrator position. I imagine this as a discussion of a couple of items. One is whether or not we would like to have an interim TA while we are hiring a permanent TA. And the second sort of general consideration or discussion would be what process we'd like to follow in finding a permanent TA. There are consultants that, as we know, can be hired to help us with this. There are some towns that have also done it themselves. There are some considerations for all of those. So that's those are the general topics. talking about thoughts on an interim TA, I'll just open it up to the board to just a discussion about whether we think this is something that would be that we should do or not. So Gary, you want to start about
Well, I think
comments on interim?
we're getting pretty close to town meeting time. So I think we really need an interim town administrator in place to oversee the final budget process. And as we know, there's several projects that are kind of on hold at the moment in town hall that really need to move forward as well. So I'd be in favor of finding an interim here while we deal with a long-term solution.
Okay, Diane, do you have?
Those are
thoughts?
good points. I was kind of hoping that maybe we could go without an interim, but that would put a lot of extra work on you guys, the two of you being retired. So I know there's a lot of things going on in town hall, and I didn't know how much you guys felt comfortable doing, but I thought maybe if we could split up our departments, maybe be a liaison, make sure the departments and all the chairs are aware that they would have to let us know of what they need, that maybe we could get through it. But town meeting is a tough one, so, and budget, although I have complete faith in our finance committee and a finance director. That was just my thoughts. But if you feel strongly that an interim would be a better way to go, I can be swayed easily.
I guess I'll comment, if this were a different time of the year, I think, well, having had a little taste of this, we're not really doing, so the department heads completely are competent and can run the day-to-day operations of their department probably without a TA, I hate to say that, but certainly without us. But in the absence, but there are a lot of things that coordinating that the town administrator does, and especially a lot in preparation for the annual town meeting and the added logistics.
Okay.
So I don't think that we need a full-time, and we've had sort of several models of interim TAs. I don't think that we need a full-time person to sit in that seat in an interim basis. I think you're right, Diane, that we can handle, between the three of us, we can handle some of the things that, you know, are more mundane, that don't require a TA. But from where I sit, it feels like we should we should think about at least I don't know what part-time means yet. We'd have to talk about that if we decide to go that way. But at least someone in that seat for part of the week, part of the hours of the day for part of the week.
Primarily for
Gary.
the, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Gary, and then we'll go back to Diane.
Yeah, my concern would be, you know, having gone through the town meeting with the solo selectman and an interim, and knowing now that more importantly, you know, there's no assistant or, you know, chief of administrative. So the question is, you know, just personnel wise, we need somebody in there to organize the town meeting itself. And right now, you know, those all three possible positions are vacant.
Right.
Got it. That makes sense. Totally.
Diane, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, but I think those are all good points. Now I get it.
Okay, so I think Trudy is raising her hand. Is
I
that true?
am. Yeah, I
Okay,
am. I just
I
want to let you
cannot-
guys know that as far as anything that has to do with the annual report, town meeting, the warrant, putting the warrant together, whatever I can do to help out, I will do what I can. And my
Great,
last
we have
two
that on
jobs,
recording.
yeah, I know. And my last two jobs, I did the annual report, so I'm very familiar with that process. Working with you guys on putting the warrant together cannot be that difficult. There's a lot of town clerks that do it anyways, and, you know, in place of the board of selectmen or town administrator. And so, you know, whatever, and any help that's needed in, you know, procuring the tent and the logistics, if there's assistance needed there, I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Trudy. I think particularly with all of the logistics of the ATM and the tent, I believe that was done before by the person who was the Director of Administrative Services and our Finance Director. Since we don't have one of those and the other one's going to be pretty busy, even with an interim TA, that's going to be a big help to have someone who's there all the time, who knows what a town meeting in Wenham looks like. I will add, if this adds anything to discussion, actually I've had several folks, interestingly enough, who saw our announcement on the website about the resignation of our TA, who have reached out with some suggestions for interims. And I've actually had an interim, a fairly past recent interim TA reach out to offer any assistance for any number of hours, short, long, or whatever we might need. So if we decide that we want to go with an interim, I think we'll have possibly a couple of choices, but certainly someone who could start soon, because if it's going to take 2 months to get an interim, hope that's not going to work. So I just wanted to put that out there. And so first of all, are we thinking part-time interim? I think Gary said that. Diana, have you been persuaded in
Yeah,
that direction?
I'm persuaded.
Okay.
Yep, you got me.
Okay.
It's just,
I think it's
I saw the whole setup for the town meeting, and I know
Mhm.
at that time, Jackie and Nikki were pretty much full-time occupied for at least the last month before town meeting, just getting the logistics set up. Because it's just not the tent, it's the power, it's the park, it's the, safety inspections and so
Right.
forth too. So it's a lot more than just ordering the tent.
Right. Okay, so we'll move forward with an interim. Do I have the board's permission to reach back out to the few people that I've spoken to and see if what the availability is and what the timing might be, and come back at our next meeting with a potential proposal? Is that okay?
Sure.
Um, and I think it's going to take some discussions with the person who we ultimately hire for this, as well as with some of the staff, to see which days in particular and which times of the day. And I'll be talking with Michelle and others to see when this person could be available. I'm at the moment thinking no more than 30 hours a week. Does that sound right? Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move ahead with that. As I said, I'll hopefully by the time we meet next week, I'll be able to bring forward a name and some conditions that person is willing to work under, a name or two, and we'll see where we could go from there. Now, so then relative to the search for the permanent TA, the last two TAs, three TAs searches that I've been involved with, we've had a search consultant. But thoughts on that? We're going to start to have to think about money pretty soon. But do we think, shall we start an RFQ, or actually I think it's just not sure what the procurement is, but it's a fairly simple procurement to ask for, put together a scope of work for a consultant who would do all, well, I guess let me just outline what I think this is in the past, we've had our consultants have done a variety of things, both different, but in general, a lot of the paperwork to put together a posting, we do already have a job description, and then to put the posting out in the appropriate places. I'm assuming there's some recruiting done, and then whether we do it in-house or out, I think we would have a screening committee, so that part would be the same. But the consultant does a lot of winnowing down of resumes, and then some initial culling of the group helps to guide the interviews, and then helps to, well, I think that's really it. Once the finalists, right, Gary, at least last year, the group that we had, once we had finalists, that group was available at our interviews, but not really, that consultant didn't really participate in anything beyond that. Is that my
Yes,
recollection?
essentially the consultant winnowed down the full list to those that were qualified. The search
Mhm.
committee went through that qualified list and did all their interviews, and then came down with the finalists that were presented to the select board. So
Right.
the consultant basically ran the background paperwork checks, the advertising and so forth, and bringing the people to the search committee. But thereafter, it was basically just doing the Corey check after our selection to confirm the individual.
Okay. And I think the group that we used before that did essentially the same thing. They did a little bit more, their process included a little bit more upfront with narrowing down the proposed candidates. And they did a pretty extensive background and criminal checks on everyone. Again, I think that particular part of it could be done in-house, but I'm interested in, we need to see what we think we can handle or want to do here. Diane, do you have any thoughts on, it's going to depend on a lot of things, but right now,
It's going to depend financially a little bit, and
yeah,
I would say do it in-house. We have a job description. They're going to post it on the MMA. That's just what it is. The problem, I think, will come down to be receiving the applicants and whittling them down to a screening committee. But I think we should do it in-house.
Gary?
Do we have access to the full last list? I mean, that's not just a few months old. It may be changing, but there should
List
be a
of,
lot of background information on some candidates there. I see it as three ways. We can either use what we have now, i.e. the last list, and start down that, or, you know, as you say, a do-it-yourself process. I think when we did the contract last time, there were a lot of options in there. So we may be a matter of sitting down the select board and the prospective consultant and going down through a checklist and say, yes, the town can do this, this, and this, but really the consultant, maybe we need them for just one or two items. So,
okay, so maybe there's an a la carte kind of
yeah.
process for things that we don't have. Okay, I would like to think that we could do it in-house for two reasons. The primary one is the money. You know, it's a pretty expensive proposition. That said, we would lose, I think what we would lose mostly is the recruiting. And we would have, I'm not sure that we actually have the staff, but I feel like personally, I'd like to be a little bit more, not hands-on. I think I would like to see, I'd like the board. I think we can do this, to perhaps see a few more of the candidates. I always find it very difficult if we have a pool of 38 that gets down to a pool of 10 and we see 2, 3 and one may drop out. So maybe one of the advantages of doing it ourselves is that we would have a little more access. Can we each take a little part in, like, Gary, do you think you can find the, what was it called? I don't know if it was an RFP or what it was, whatever we used to invite consultants, because if we're going to have a consultant or consider a consultant, I think we need a couple. But do you think you can find what we've used in the past, and maybe
that should be available there at the executive assistant's computer.
Okay.
Hi,
Yeah, and
I
then-
think I did see a list of prior applicants somewhere. I'll look in the files.
Okay, I will tell you that I know that we have everything that was done by the consultants before, both consultants are proprietary. So I do not think that we have access to any resumes that we didn't, that were a part of that search, nor do I, well, it was 5 months ago. I mean, all of our finalists have jobs elsewhere. So I don't think we're going to be able to, I think we're going to have to use some other resources for the lists. But at least we can find out maybe what the a la carte options are and, you know, see what we've done before and identify what a la carte options we may need to have. So if you can do that and report back
Right.
at our meeting, Gary, that'd be great.
Will do.
And we do have organizations that we can rely on. And also, Diane, you might be able to access this or have time to do this. There have been several towns recently, and I wish I could remember one very recently. I want to say Groveland or Newberry, I could be wrong, that have done their own search without a consultant. Do you think you could try to identify at least the names of a couple of towns reasonably like us?
Mhm. Sure.
And then we can maybe query them on how they did it. Any way we look at it, I think that's well, people always say a 3 month. I say it's a 3 to 6 month window of actually getting a replacement person from today. I'd like to think that we'd have someone in time just right after town meeting, but I think we've got to count on 3 months. So we should probably get started pretty soon.
Mhm.
And I think it's possible that we might be meeting more than once every couple of weeks, more than the 1st and 3rd through February. Does anyone have an inkling that might be the case or a problem if we had to add a meeting to
Pretty much
finalize some
always
of these things?
available.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so I'll work on finding and getting some ideas for an interim, and you guys will be working on the permanent consultant thing, and we'll regroup next Tuesday for our regular meeting. So I think we're good for moving forward for the next week. I just wanted to be sure that any folks didn't. So the next thing is operational issues that need to be addressed. And I think we're good in terms of getting things signed and done so that we can, move forward. As I said, our department heads are amazing. And we have a new department head who I hope to invite to our meeting next week. Rich Souza's our DPW head. And I think he's going to be great. Everyone has pitched in to help in places that they don't normally. Michelle has been great. But I just am thinking I might not be thinking of everything. I'm trying to ask folks if they have anything, but operationally, for the short term, are there any issues that you think that we're not addressing? I found out the hard way on Friday that we needed to update our phone tree and the process for notifying people of a snow day. So I got that one, but anything else, Diane or Gary, that you can think of operationally that we should be addressing that we're not?
Well, I think the one thing that is coming up pretty rapidly is probably need to sit down with the finance director and sort out. I saw that long email today, the final rules for the COVID money coming from the federal government.
Right. Yeah.
Gary, I didn't get that email. Would you forward yours
do.
to me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
The ARPA
they
money.
are. Yeah, they're coming out with a lot of rules. And I know that I believe that we've contracted with Powers and Sullivan to be sort of our consultants. They'll be the experts on that, but yeah, we need to sit.
Because
I'll
I
talk
think it
to
involves
Jamie.
some, not just the finance, but some policy questions on our part as to where to allocate that money, being a one-time fund.
Right. And, we have received a note from our new rep, Jamie Belcito, talking about how we would like to allocate those funds. I think until anyway, from my point of view, we know a little bit more about what they are. That's kind of hard for me to opine on, but I'll put that on the agenda for next week. And we'll see what information we have and what decisions we might have to make. There are really a long list of things, as Gary said earlier. Maybe the other one operationally that we are at risk of getting behind on. Well, there's two, but the one I'm thinking about is the Route 1A project. I feel like by now we were supposed to have a design update by the engineers, and I have not had a chance to follow up on that, but I think, am I remembering correctly? It was like December, January that we were going to have our next sort of public hearing on that, which was an actual physical step in the process.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think you reminded me of that, and we do want to keep that moving. So I will add it to my list. Okay, anything else?
I
Of
had a
course,
couple
you know.
things.
Yeah, what you got?
I think we should see what we can do about hiring someone for the permitting coordinator. I think that
Oh, that's a
position is
good
getting
point.
very difficult to follow up with Margaret and Kate. Katie or Kate? I think it's Kate. And
think it's
Sheila
Kate.
all covering that. And Rich Maloney's been in a lot. So
Yeah.
maybe we can just get that started. I think we had the job description all ready to go.
We do. That
Hmm.
sounds reasonable.
And
And I
then-
think
and
Rich
then-
would be willing to help us at least, sort of serve on the screening committee to get someone in. Oh. I don't know if it's me or Diane, but
I
I
think it's
think she's
Diane.
frozen. Oh. Diane, you're frozen on us. So hard because she doesn't know.
Oh, here we are. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can
Missed
hear
that
you.
whole thing.
You
Yeah, you
all
might have to
froze. It
start
was the
again.
craziest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the RFP for the master plan, we appointed Jamie to be the procurement officer. And I think Margaret had recommended that we ask, what's her name?
Vicky
Vicky
Masson.
Masson.
Yeah,
Vicky Masson to take that over. And I think both Jamie and Margaret thought that was a great idea. That would be really helpful to keep that moving.
and I'm sorry, I should give you an update. I have my update of everything I've done put together for our next meeting, but really we did something on that already that
Oh.
I've signed. So there were some grant application documents that were pending for the RFP. So
Mhm.
those are, I think, all set now. And I think the initial quote, so the Vicky Masson part, Margaret says would be paid for out of the $75,000 grant
Yeah.
that we're going to be getting for the master plan. So I think that she's going to go ahead with talking to Vicky about getting that started. Planning
Perfect.
board seemed really concerned about that one. I think
Yeah.
that's the only substantive thing to move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
So we can get an update on that too. I think that grant money, if I understand correctly or remember correctly, needs to be spent by June.
Yes,
So they're
Yeah.
quite anxious to actually get it. We have it, but there are the paperwork to actually receive it and the reporting and all of that. And we need the RFP. Did you have anything else, Diane?
I didn't. Those were the things on my mind.
Okay, two big ones. Yeah. Okay. So some of those things we'll put on the agenda for next week, and I can talk to Rick about permitting coordinator. There was some question, and I think it's been cleared up. I don't think that the FinCom, they were questioning whether or not we should be hiring they were feeling, the last time I watched a meeting, it seemed as if they thought the permitting coordinator was an additional position, like a new position. So I
Right.
think there have been some discussions there, but they meet this week and hopefully they'll clear that up because I mean, we've had a permitting coordinator for as long as I can remember. It's just
Right.
it's just looked different. It's been an individual and then it was Jackie, and then she got more things, and then it was Laura. But I think you're right, Diane. I think folks who are filling in for that now are really needing some help.
Right.
So we'll follow up on that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else that folks can think of that? If not, I have no other matters. We do have a couple of upcoming meetings this Thursday, the 13th.
At 7,
We
I think.
have, yeah, we have the Quint board or joint tri-board, 2 times 3 or 5, I don't know. The meeting with everyone, all members of all the boards in each town. We're meeting, we should have all received our webinar numbers for that. I believe that our FinCom and Finance Director are planning some sort of an update. The school committee, I believe, had to cancel a meeting, the meeting that they were going to have last week to vote the tentative budget because of some pretty significant website problems that they had, which I think now have been resolved, but I think they might be meeting tonight. So I think the timing of this January 13th meeting was to coincide with the,
Catherine?
yes,
Catherine,
Trudy.
I'm sorry. They had to cancel tonight because it hadn't been posted to their website. And they were going to reschedule for Wednesday.
For Wednesday. Thank you for that, Trudy.
That was the latest I heard, but it was canceled for tonight.
Okay, so assuming that they meet on the 12th, which is Wednesday, then our meeting on the 13th, in my opinion, makes sense because I think the whole point is now to see the next iteration of the school budget. And I think that's what this meeting has been in the past, mostly. Okay, here's the interim budget and for us to sort of update them on where we are and sort of react to their situation. But if they don't meet Wednesday, what do we think about Thursday?
Well, I think Thursday, unless the school committee cancel it, I still think we ought to be there so we can
How
hear
quickly can you get to the school
Hamilton's
website?
inputs
Or
on
are you in the middle of something?
their budget and their affordability as well.
Never mind, I can probably do it.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think I wasn't suggesting that we not be there. I'm sorry, Gary. I was suggesting, should there be should we be making a suggestion that if the point is to discuss the interim budget and they have yet to be able to vote on one, should we postpone that meeting? But yeah, I agree. If they've got something to talk about, we should totally be there. So I guess we'll just wait to see. It'll
Their
be in
website
the
isn't
ball will
up
be in
yet.
there. It's not up yet.
Yeah, so if they
And
don't
I-
get it up tomorrow, then they'll have to cancel a meeting. But
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the ball's in their court. We'll have to wait to see, but certainly if there's any kind of a meeting that's worthwhile, I think I agree with Gary. We should plan to be there. So our voices can be heard, our FinCom can be heard. And then again, next week on Tuesday is our regular select board meeting. I will ask people now to put a placeholder on the 25th, which is the following Tuesday, thinking about all of these agreements and contracts and consultants that we're talking about. And we might just need to have a meeting the next week to finalize some things. So we'll see how this week turns out.
Catherine?
Yes,
It's
Trudy. Yeah.
Dave's looking at their school's website and it is up and the meeting is posted for Wednesday.
Oh, okay. That's great.
At 7 to 9.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll
not
we'll
posted
assume
yet.
that stays the same. And we'll, like I said, unless anybody hears otherwise, we'll plan on the 13th and a Zoom meeting with the other boards of the towns and the school. Okay. Anybody else have anything for tonight? If not, I will
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I can't tell about the school committee website. It's weird to me, but I take a motion to
Oh.
adjourn.
Second,
Okay, probably don't need to talk about that. We'll take a vote. Gary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes. Thank you.
Catherine? Yes. Great. That's good. I think we've got at least a path forward. I don't know where the path's going to take us yet, but we've got a path forward. It's been good to share that with everyone. And we will talk again next week, or actually before that, but we'll meet next week. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned at 8. Oh, I should look, huh?
No.
7:29.